Welcome to Faithful Resistance. As we record episode 11, it is mid-May. We're well past the first 100 days of the White House. Approval numbers for the administration keep slipping. The list of unprecedenteds keeps growing, like accepting that so-called gift of a lavishly appointed jet from a foreign power, possibly suspending habeas corpus so immigrants can be instantly deported, tariffs going up, tariffs going down. I wonder, how are you coping with all of this? Anger, fear, frustration? I know. I go from yelling at the news to wanting to bury my head in the sand to deciding this is the day I do more to fight back. And that's why we're doing this podcast at Jefferson Unitarian Church, to provide some ideas and hopefully some inspiration to faithfully resist. Something that gets us out of our individual silos and gets us working together because, and we all know it, nothing can be more powerful than working together. We have two guests today to provide some ideas and inspiration. We'll talk to a leader of Indivisible, Colorado. Indivisible is known for its no-nonsense approach to influencing our government representatives, something we can all learn to do a little better. And we'll talk to the executive director of the Colorado Council of Churches to hear how and why that organization and its hundreds of member churches are faithfully resisting. So we'll start with Robin from Indivisible, Colorado. Thank you for joining us to talk about Indivisible a little bit. And I wonder, with all the things that have been happening from the White House, the hollowing out of the government and the attacks on constitutional rights and all the things, we know them so well. How do you kind of assess the current climate of resistance in Colorado to that?
Thank you, Chris. Well, first, I just want to share, thank you for having me on today. And I'm really excited to talk about Indivisible Colorado and to, to help people to understand what we do and how to get involved. But to answer your question, if I were to have answered your question maybe in the middle of March or early April, I felt just a little more pessimistic. I really was worried because we weren't yet seeing, even though it was starting to happen, we weren't seeing as much of this massive resistance that we're starting to see now. And but now, as time has gone by, I'm really starting to be more optimistic. The protests that we're seeing are very visible. The polls that have come out are very, and it's not just one poll and it's not just, a little bit. We're really starting to see, I think the tide is turning a little, and I think that it's so important that we reach out to as many people as we can. We may disagree on certain things, but we all have to agree that having an autocratic government is not what America was founded on. It's not going to help anybody in this country, and it's not the direction we're going to allow this country to go in.
I'm certainly seeing a lot of people who are saying for the resistance to succeed, it has to be more than Republican versus Democrat, liberal versus conservative. It has to be a bigger picture than that. Is that what you're saying?
Most Americans really believe in democracy. Most Americans do not believe that it's okay to just grab people off the streets, citizens or legal residents of this country, and ship them to a torture prison in El Salvador. That is not the way we do things in America. And even if you're one of my Republican neighbors that may have voted for this administration, I don't think you're going to support that. So I do think that this needs to be a big tent. And that, in fact, is how countries who have fought off autocratic takeovers have been successful, is just saying, hey, we're not going to agree with all of our neighbors on everything, but we are going to agree that this kind of a takeover is not okay.
What is Indivisible doing on a day-to-day basis to pull together the people under this big tent?
Sure. So, every organization out there has things that they are probably, good at and that they specialize in. And so for Indivisible, what we really have come from and what we're good at, our secret sauce, is in influeing elected officials. And so we believe in the power. We still have free and fair elections in this country. And we absolutely expect that when we go to the polls in 2026, we are going to have free and fair elections. And that's when we as constituents are going to be able to vote in elected officials who support democracy. So what we're doing right now, we're calling our Democratic members of Congress. So if you're a person like myself, all three of my members of Congress are Democrats. So I call them and I say thank you when they do something that I agree with. And I say do better when I feel like they could have fought a little bit harder for something. On the flip side, if you're a person who lives with Republican members of Congress, you have a lot of leverage right now. Tell them, hey, I am not up for cuts to Medicaid. A lot of my friends and family are on Medicaid. I want you to vote no on that. You can tell them, hey, I don't believe that it's okay to violate people's civil rights and to not give everybody the right to due process. Give them a call. That's what Indivisible really specializes in.
Two more questions then. One is, how do people get involved? And the second is about you personally. Let's start with how do people get involved?
So glad you asked. So, the Indivisible National Organization has a wonderful website, and, it's indivisible.org. So, you can absolutely go there, and it's got a lot of good resources. We also have a website for the Colorado team, and it's indivisiblecolorado.net. So just remember that it's .net. And go there, and then once you get there, there's a couple things you can click on. The first thing I would definitely recommend that everybody do is click on the link to subscribe to our weekly calls to action. And that way, you'll get on an email list. I know everybody gets a ton of email, but, it's still a very good way to, find out what's going on. And we'll send you weekly information about, hey, here are ways that you can get involved, and they're packed with ideas. So you're not going to do them all. You're going to pick the ones that work for you, but definitely subscribe to that. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is, we've always got stuff on that website, on our indivisiblecolorado.net website, that you can just directly click on. So as an example, we generally run these statewide calls. Not sure what the June call is going to be, but we'll have somebody good for you. So yeah, those are ways to get engaged.
Let's end with asking about why you do this. You may remember this podcast is called Faithful Resistance. And I don't know if you're coming from a place of faith or some other thing that makes you put your heart and soul into this. How did you get here?
I am coming from a place of faith. I'm a Christian, and I deeply believe that this would not be okay with Jesus. And, there are so many good places of faith that you can come from, whether it's Christianity or another faith. But, most religions, most serious religions, would never be okay with the violation of human rights and with the tremendous movement of wealth from the poorest of us, to the richest of us. Not okay. My faith is not okay with that. I have kids, I have adult kids, and I deeply want them. I am so interested in having them be able to have an America where they feel safe, and they have, the right to free speech, and they have a shot at economic prosperity. And then I'll just end with, my dad was a veteran. He served in the Korean War, and he was a Republican, but he would not be okay with this. He did not go to Korea and put his life on the line to defend the kind of actions that this administration is pulling. So, yeah, those are some deeply held beliefs that I have.
Well, I appreciate you coming on the podcast, and I appreciate what you do. Wish you the best of luck. Hope a lot of people go to indivisiblecolorado.net so that they can get involved.
Thank you. Yes, me too. Thank you, Chris.
Our next conversation is with Adrian Miller, who leads the Colorado Council of Churches. I don't think it's overly dramatic these days to say the fate of our American democracy is at stake. And to faithfully resist and make a real impact, we need partners in justice. We don't all need to believe exactly the same things. You may know, for example, that Unitarian Universalism is not a Christian denomination like those in the Colorado Council of Churches, but we still have things in common. Our UU faith tradition has its roots in Christianity and values Jesus as a great teacher and moral exemplar. And we have shared values: justice, human dignity, equity, all centered around love. We talked with Adrian about his views and the Council's views on faithful resistance. So we're so happy today to be joined by Adrian Miller, who is the Executive Director of the Colorado Council of Churches and has been for, like 12 or 13 years now. Is that right, Adrian?
That's right. 12 going into 13. Yeah.
I want to start by asking you to do a little bit of the who's and the what's of the Colorado Council of Churches. Who's in it? What do you do?
The Colorado Council of Churches goes back to 1935, so 90 years, and we began with 14 Christian denominations. We now have 13. So basically, we are a coming together of 13 Christian denominations, and our mission is this: walking together in faith, working together for justice. So the 13 denominations essentially are the mainline Protestant denominations, and we have a few others. And then we do have affiliated organizations that may or may not be Christian in their focus, but they share our values. But now we represent about 600 churches across the state of Colorado.
Looking at the current spring of 2025, what are the, would you say, the pressing justice concerns of the Colorado Council of Churches and its members?
Oh, there's so many. So we have 9 public policy areas that are a priority. So quickly, our main 9 ones are affordable housing and homelessness, the education of children, criminal justice reform, the environment, poverty, affordable health care, immigration reform, racism. And then we have something we call kind of families free of violence. So it's really a focus on domestic violence. So those are our main public policy priorities. But now, just given what's going on, we are looking at how do we care for the most vulnerable in our society? How do we protect them, minister to them? With all of the things going on, unexpected job loss for federal employees, a lot of economic uncertainty, but just really, how do we come together in this time, reaffirm each other, especially for those of us who are concerned with social justice?
Immigration has certainly been on a lot of people's minds. Would you talk a little bit about how the council approaches immigration?
Yeah, so our main thing is that the immigration system is broken. I don't think anybody with any sense can say that it's otherwise. And so we are pressing for meaningful education reform, but biblically, we are called to welcome the stranger. So if people are here, we've got to figure out ways to minister to them and to get them in the process so that they can have a path to citizenship. But one program that we did recently is we had a workshop, a webinar workshop for churches that have ministries for migrants. And we just walked through, what are your rights legally? What can you do? What can you not do? And if you decide to do something you're not supposed to do, here are the possible consequences. But we wanted to inform congregations of, here are your rights as a congregation if you have these ministries. And if you see people involved in your ministries being targeted, here are the rights that they have. And we want people to be mindful of the law, but we also know that social justice concerns may lead them to consider other things. So we just wanted to make sure that they knew what their rights were and what their options are. So we're trying to give practical advice in these times of what churches can do to be prophetic witnesses in the public on a variety of issues, especially immigration.
One of the things that's been up for grabs, is one way to put it, is the whole possibility of being a sanctuary church.
Yeah.
And I know you're an attorney by background, and so I'm especially interested to hear what you have to say about what rights do churches have still to be sanctuaries.
So churches can be sanctuary, especially in Denver, where they're a sanctuary city. But if you're going to be a sanctuary, you still have to take steps to make sure that you have public and private distinctions in terms of the areas of your congregation. So we gave people advice on how they can create private spaces within their congregation. And then we let them know, okay, if federal authorities, particularly ICE, show up at your doorstep looking for someone, here's what a valid warrant looks like. And here are the steps that you can take if you do not want to allow entrance into your church. But, in some situations, people may already be in the building. Somebody who's at your church who's a volunteer, just being friendly, just let somebody in. And so we walk people through the steps of what could happen in various scenarios. But we really wanted to give them threshold knowledge of, here are your rights as a church if you are providing sanctuary, and here are steps that you can take to further secure that. So, for instance, there are churches now that are posting language on every entrance saying, hey, you can't come in here looking for someone unless you have a valid warrant, things like that.
I wonder, that the name of our podcast, you may remember that, is Faithful Resistance. Do you consider yourself a faithful resistor? And if you do, what does it mean to you?
Yeah, I do, because I figured that I am someone who's been blessed to have the opportunity to fight injustice. And I think I want to resist anytime injustice surfaces and is operating. It seems now that it's operating stronger than ever. And so I think the challenge that's for the last several months have been a real shock to the system. There are some things that people anticipated. There's some things that people didn't anticipate that are happening in real time and very, very quickly. So I think people were reeling from that happening and figuring out, okay, what do I do? How do I fight back? So I think the challenge for faith leaders and others who care about justice is reaffirming people and letting them know that they're on the path of righteousness, and then also giving them practical steps of how they can be resistant and how they can fight back. I think people are searching for what to do. I mean, people have been walking the streets. We've had a lot of people show up at protests, but I think people are searching for, okay, I want to demonstrate. I want to show the solidarity, but I really want to stop things from happening. And I really want to rectify what's going on. How do I do that?
What role do you see faith communities playing in resisting and meaningfully resisting and maybe making and turning back what's happening?
Well, I think the first thing is just not be silent. I think we need to be a voice in the public square saying this is not right. And I will only speak to my segment of the faith community, Christianity. But a lot of what's happening right now, in the negative sense, is being associated with Christians. And so those of us who are part of that faith tradition who don't agree with what's happening, we have to say, we're Christian as well. And we don't think that this is a faithful interpretation of certainly what Jesus was saying or the Bible. So we need to, I think, present, at least within Christianity, a counter narrative to the one that's emerged right now, and show that we are about love, peace, and justice, and being prophetic in that voice in the public square. And I think it's also important to convene spaces, whether they be virtual or important, for people to come together and realize you're not alone. There are reasons to be scared, but we have strength collectively. I think also our pastors need to start preaching about this stuff on Sunday. A lot of people come to church wanting to escape from the larger world. I don't think that's reflective of Jesus, because he was commenting on the things that were happening in that day. Jesus was very political. And so I think that we have to have some courage. And I understand why pastors are reluctant to do that. They don't want to divide their congregation. They don't want people to leave the church, especially people with money. Let's just be frank. The people with money often are the ones that tend to see things a little bit differently. Not all the time, but that often is the case. But I think it's kind of a reassessment time and a gut check to say, okay, if I call myself a follower of Jesus, and I need to look at those words that Jesus preached thousands of years ago that still hold meaning to this day, and see how I can apply that in this time. And I think for those pastors who are afraid of losing people, I just think if we got back to what Jesus preached, especially in Matthew 25, about caring for the marginalized, I think people would start flocking back to the church. Just my opinion.
Can you tell me personally what gives you the strength to do what you're doing now and to try to lead all these churches
So yeah, I joke about this. So my heart is for the last several years has been with racial reconciliation, and I tell people that for whatever reason, God has blessed me with the ability to hear really crazy stuff said by white people, but to stay in that space and not leave and just stay there and say, okay, well, why do you think that? Ask questions, and delve in and try to find a way to find common ground so we can address, what's floating around in people's heads about people of different races. So I really take the word seriously that Jesus spoke, and other faith traditions speak these words about loving other people. I take that seriously. So that's really what motivates me. So I have the energy right now. I'm going to be frank. I don't know how much longer I'm going to have that energy, but I do have it right now. So as long as I have it, I try to find those opportunities to be present and to engage in dialogue and do this work. And I tell people all the time, again, if you're a follower of Jesus, just look at Jesus' example in the Bible. Every time there's a conversation that's, leads towards conflict, Jesus does not say, forget you and leave. Jesus stays, asks questions, tries to get that person to look at things a different way. And it's always the other person who leaves. It's not Jesus. So I'm just mystified by these Christians who just say, I can't talk to you, or you're the Antichrist or whatever, and find any reason why not to engage, and don't even want to come to the table with somebody who has maybe a different worldview. That's not the example that I see that Jesus set for us.
What hope do you feel that the member congregations and faith traditions of the Council of Churches have this same kind of passion and are going to really use it to advance these causes of justice?
Well, we're already seeing it right now. I mean, we're seeing churches who are hosting events. They're encouraging people to go to marches. They're trying to get people to go to these workshops so they understand their rights. So we're seeing action. I've always noticed that churches, Christians do spring into action when there is a crisis moment. These people respond. My prayer is that we do this work when it's not a crisis, so that we can either be prepared when the crisis comes, or we can maybe prevent the crisis altogether. But I see churches in action already, and just the responses I'm getting, people like, what are you guys doing? What are we going to do? What's going on? I see a lot of energy, and I think for meaningful reasons, it's kind of underground right now because of the scrutiny that's happening in the public. But there are people working. Rest assured, there are people working.
We appreciate the work that you do. We really do. And
right.
and wish you and the Council of Churches and all people of goodwill a lot of fortitude and the best of luck. Thank you, Adrian, very much.
Thank you. Blessings to you.
If you have ideas for organizations or spiritual leaders for us to talk to on this podcast, please let us know. The easiest way is to email us at faithfulresistance@jeffersonunitarian.org. And by all means, share this podcast with your friends and subscribe. And until our next episode of Faithful Resistance on 2nd and 4th Thursdays, keep holding each other up and keep doing the next right thing.
Go out, do the next right thing.